long relationships often mistake duration for health. I know you and I talked about this with respect to relationships that you've had for decades. History does not automatically update expectations, repair old harm, redistribute effort, or set new boundaries. A relationship can have enormous emotional value and still require brand new agreements. And so the question I have for you is, are we maintaining these relationships, or are we expecting history to perform the maintenance for us?
We talk a lot about whether a relationship is good or bad, but that's not especially useful when you're trying to figure out what actually needs to change. So in this segment, we're giving you a way to stress test the relationships and teams that you already have. There are 3 things to look for. Are the agreements keeping up with the people? Is the responsibility actually being shared? And does the structure work without someone constantly having to save it? Because whether we're talking about the best man, soul food, or the bear, the same problem keeps showing up. When people evolve, but the roles and the systems don't, somebody eventually starts carrying more than they should. By the end of this, you should be able to identify where your relationship needs a new agreement and not just more effort.
So the final chapters of The Best Man we have to talk about. And one of the things that the final chapters of The Best Man showed us is that the friendships in The Best Man were a universe that survived decades, carried history, inside jokes, marriages, betrayals, and deeply established roles. The characters could not, though, keep up with relating to past versions of each other. There was growth that happened, parenthood that happened, career shifts, and illnesses that forced the friendships to become more than just nostalgia. And so long relationships often mistake duration for health. I know you and I talked about this with respect to relationships that you've had for decades. History does not automatically update expectations, repair old harm, redistribute effort, or set new boundaries. A relationship can have enormous emotional value and still require brand new agreements. And so the question I have for you is, are we maintaining these relationships, or are we expecting history to perform the maintenance for us?
Good question. You talked about The Best Man, and I will talk about one of my favorite series on Netflix, Grace and Frankie. I loved it. And they became friends. They were all friends. All 4 of the couple, or the 2 couples were friends. And they connected because their husbands left the wives for each other. And so instead of their friendship just falling apart, they continued to renegotiate it. And what I really liked about it was the fact that if you watch the series, you'll see how they navigate just different things. They're getting older, some health issues, whatever, but they always renegotiate. They were always negotiating as the other person went through whatever journey they went through. Did you ever see that movie, Stand By Me? I love it. It was like Stand By Me and, I can't think of the other one. You're killing me, Smalls. Stand By Me, they decide they want to go off and they're going to see a dead body. And so they're these kids and they're friends and they go through this experience and it shapes them forever. But as they get older and they become adults, they just move away from their history. Their history didn't keep them together. They went off and did other things. And I think that we sometimes treat the longevity of a relationship as proof of the health of a relationship. Like my friend, we've been best friends since the 7th grade. Yay, good for us. But we've also gone through a lot of tests, trials, and tribulations. And so I have so many different versions of myself. She's been so many different versions of herself. But what we have to do is we have to keep valuing that version. It's not the history. It's not the longevity. It's the fact that I'm still invested. I'm still curious. I still invite space for her to grow, share, whatever. I think it's always that space for communication. It's the same through all of these different receipts that we've gone through, giving the space to reevaluate, examine, and allow the other person to grow.
Yeah, I think if we go back to where we started the conversation with respect to the 50-50 and with respect to understanding that people are going to change and there's certain aspects that you may say, we're not going to be able to agree on certain things because you've evolved, in a certain way. I've evolved in a certain way. And we're just not going to be able to do that. That doesn't mean that the relationship is damaged. That just means that relationship has evolved. And so from that standpoint, the conversations that you have with someone that you may have known in grade school or high school, it's important to have those relationships because those people will know you before and they will know you now. And so they'll know different versions of you. But it's also important for those individuals to remind you of other versions of you. And so you will know in some cases how far you've come, or you'll know in some cases what part of you remain true to your core. And so from that standpoint, I think, again, we have to allow grace and space for individuals to evolve. We have to stop treating individuals as if the version of them that we are talking to is the same version that we met, 20, 30, 40 years ago. So I do take your point.
And we also have to allow space to say, I appreciate and celebrate where you are in your life. That's not for me. And if it's time to move on, it's time to move on. Just because we were friends in the 7th grade doesn't mean that our relationship is sealed in amber. If something had happened with my bestie and she just decided, I don't support all of these social issues that I support, like I just can't take it anymore, and it was always a point of friction between us, then I'd say, you know what? I love you and I wish you the best, but I cannot continue to operate in this space with you.
Yeah, I think that's important to be able to have those conversations and to be able to receive them in a manner that, will allow you guys to paint a pathway forward. And that allows us to receipt number 2, and that is soul food and the emotional capital versus the structural capital. You remember in Soul Food, you had Big Mama, who was the absorber of all things from a cultural standpoint and an emotional standpoint. She understood everyone's struggles. She also got everyone's shit that was handed and placed on her lap. They were all throwing stuff at her. Big Mama knew everyone's secrets. And so from that standpoint, she was that repository. But being that repository in terms of not only the emotional aspect, but more importantly, the cultural and structural aspect took a toll. And you'll see that in a lot of families where you'll have the patriarch or the matriarch who is at that emotional linchpin, who is absorbing all of that. And by absorbing all of that, the other individuals that are part of that family aren't developing those muscles that would allow them to do the things that would take some of the onus off of the big mamas of the world. And so the question that I have for you is, did Big Mama build a connected family, or did the family allow Big Mama to carry the connection for everyone because it was easier for Big Mama to do it than for Lynn to have the conversation with Terry or one of her sisters?
But I think that there's always 1 or 2 cousins or nieces or nephews or grandchildren. There's always a few that are watching what Big Mama's doing. So Big Mama's not just cooking the food. It goes back to the culture thing when we were talking about values. And I said that a lot of the things that you were talking about were behaviors or symptoms, but they weren't the value themselves. It was never about the food. The food was the invitation to get people to build that community, to build that family. There's always a couple of people that may not be taking over because Big Mama is the main attraction, but they're observing. And they understand what Big Mama was actually doing, not just making some delicious yams. She was inviting people over to continue that family unit.
Yeah, I do agree that there are some individuals who will be noticing. In this particular case, it was grandson who was noticing.
But it was also Terry and Bird. Remember when Big Mama went to the hospital and Bird decided to make a terrible meal? But she knew that it was about bringing the family together.
Yeah.
It wasn't about biscuits.
I take your point there, and that's a good point. Good point. And that leads us to the final receipt for edutainment, which is a show that I know you are finishing up and appreciate, and it's just wrapping up its run, and that is The Bear. And when we think about The Bear, there are some individuals who could not watch it because of the frenetic pace. And because Carmen was such a lightning rod in terms of anxiety, and he loved messiness, but in his messiness, there was structure. And so from that standpoint, what he saw was structure and urgency. Other individuals saw as messiness and disorganization and a little too frenetic. But the question then becomes, when you are dealing with so many dysfunctional teams or so many dysfunctional people, And the problems can be infrastructure problems because passion cannot replace communication, as you said. Urgency cannot replace role clarity, and sacrifice cannot remain the permanent business model. But the beer shows us the direct link between emotional systems and operating systems. In our relationship, you are the emotional one. That there is no debating that. You are the emotional one. You're the hothead. I'm the operational one. And so from that standpoint,
or some people may say, I'm the feeler and you're the robot.
So a workplace cannot become healthier unless people learn to regulate pressure, distribute authority, and repair damage. So the audit question for you is this: does this system help people become excellent, or does it require them to become exhausted before excellence is possible?
I think it's interesting. I actually finished The Bear, and at the end of it, his messiness was in the eye of the beholder, because where he ends up, organization and vision is important. So I think that it was the definition of the beholder and how they were experiencing his world for Carmi. Anyway, to get back to your question, this reminds me of this client that you seem confused.
Yeah, because
it seems like your robot brain is trying to do something.
Yeah, because I don't think it was Carmi that saw the structure. I think it was the individuals around him.
I know, but I'm saying that where he ended up requires that. So obviously he did see it, but he saw it through his own eyes. And
no,
it's like a beautiful mind. That we rely. Okay, well that was how I interpret it. So good thing we not watch the show together.
Okay, so for those who haven't watched The Bear, spoiler alert.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
So, where he ends up and where the company or restaurant ends up is because there were systems and chaos in place, and that system and chaos that was in place had to function as if he wasn't there and to make do as if he wasn't there because of the announcements and decisions that he made.
I don't agree with that. I think that, okay, so I'm going to say this. I had this client that we just consistently struggled to deliver what we had promised on time, because our engineering team thought they were the project manager. And they're just like, we're going to build this. And I'm like, that wasn't in this SAL. So that wasn't in the statement of work. So why are you building it? They were just always upset. And so I was their account manager, project manager. And I was always caught in the middle of trying to manage the customer's expectations and then measure our deliverables. And I had a coworker that asked me, she said, well, do they not value Herculean efforts? And I said, no, they value quality the first time so that there's no need for Herculean efforts. And I think that on The Bear, what they realized is, yeah, they were able to get through things, but what was the cost of getting through it? People's mental health, people burning out, people whatever, crying in the bathroom or whatever they were doing. That was the cost. And once they finally said, let's stop, let's send some people to wherever they were at, Denmark or wherever they went, to learn how to, become a pastry chef. Let's put some structures in place so that we are not constantly trying to be reactive and we can be more proactive. That's when they start succeeding. And you think about Richie and where he was. Once Richie calmed and he started to get organized, then even though it looked like fast-paced, there was a system. And so there wasn't a requirement for them to do these Herculean efforts where people were burned out, stressed out, whatever. They needed to put the infrastructure in place in order for it to be successful.
But they needed to put the infrastructure in place. Carmi did not put the infrastructure in place.
Okay, but Carmi, he may not have, because I think that Carmi was dealing with a lot of other stuff, and that's the best part of being a leader in a team, recognizing where your opportunities for growth are and then bringing people in to shore up those gaps. That's what a leader does. They don't do everything, because if you do everything, you turn into a robot.
So I would agree that yes, he was forced to bring in individuals or allow individuals to do things that he wasn't
forced to do it. He wasn't forced. How was he forced?
He was forced by his uncle, because his uncle was the finance guy.
So, because he had a choice. He had a choice. He could have continued.
Right. He was forced by his uncle to say, okay, you do this well. At the same time, we need to franchise this, and this because that's where the bread and butter is.
I'd like to know what you were multitasking with when you watched this show, because you took away, wow. Like my
Yes,
takeaway.
you do this well.
You are so.
You do this well, but you have a rock star. You have a rock star chef who others are trying to poach, and you need to allow her.
The uncle did not come up with what are you talking about?
You do this well.
Oh
but
my
you
God.
also
John, were you working on a spreadsheet or what were you doing at the same time? But I'm confused.
That Richie is a great front office.
You need to stop. Well, I'm done with this. The uncle did not say, you need to really stop. The uncle did none of these things.
The uncle did all of it. Now, that said, for those who have not watched The Bear, it is a great show.
My God, that is hilarious.
Dysfunction, and it's about. Just please watch the show on your own, and please do not take, Siskel's review of it, because Siskel was apparently multitasking, and I don't know which show he was watching. That is not true. Okay. So what's the point? The point is history is not infrastructure. You can know someone for 20 years. You can love them. You can have been through marriages, kids, careers, losses, all of it, and still be operating inside a relationship that was designed for people neither one of you are anymore. And that's what The Best Man, Soul Food, and The Bear gave us, with 3 completely different directions. With The Best Man, the question is whether the relationship has actually evolved with the people in it, or whether everyone is still interacting with an old version of each other. With Soul Food, the question becomes who is carrying the relationship, because if one big mama is responsible for keeping everyone connected, that may feel like a family tradition. But structurally, everyone gets to avoid developing muscles required to maintain that family themselves. And The Bear takes the same issue into the workplace. If your team is only succeeding because someone is constantly rescuing it, working harder, or observing the pressure, if someone is making Herculean efforts, you don't have a strong system. You have a system being subsidized by someone's exhaustion. So when you audit a relationship, a family or team, ask 3 things. Do the agreements still fit the people? Is the responsibility actually distributed? And can this thing function without somebody constantly having to save it? That's role recognition. If you haven't watched the full relationship audit episode, go back and watch it, because this is only one part of the larger question we're asking. What makes a relationship worth maintaining? And while you're there, subscribe and join us in the comments. I want to know what you're thinking. I want to know if these 3 tests expose something you didn't consider before. But don't leave this as something you thought about for 15 minutes on YouTube. In the next 30 days, choose one relationship or team you intend to keep, identify one expectation, responsibility, or boundary that no longer fits, and renegotiate it out loud with the person who shares it. That's the point. While you're out and about this week, make the time to do something nice for yourself. And while you're at it, take the time to do something nice for someone else. Until next time, we'll talk to you.
And that's a wrap. Thank you for listening and spending your time with us on I Take Your Point. For more unfiltered conversations like this, click the link in the description. Huge thank you to our production team. We couldn't do this without you. Quick disclaimer, the views shared are those of the host and guest and are for informational purposes only, not professional advice. Keep building your own table, take care, and be well.